can like the ping pong balls.
Oh, yeah.
We're live.
We're live,
He's
Shakespeare,
hitting them around the
side
house.
talk, Shakespeare side talk.
It's just-
You should look up
This
his
is
house.
Senate
we had 18
Appropriations,
last
February
time.
13th. And we're not talking about Shakespeare, we're talking about the budget adjustment act. And so we're gonna go through the sheet that we have that shows what the governor did, and what the House did, and see if we have any changes. If we can close it out, then we won't talk about it again.
This is the last one going, sir.
Well,
Finish.
no, I'm looking for this one, but I don't have, I have this one.
So that one. I have a shorter version.
Yeah, this is the
Yeah.
short version.
I had both of them.
Only the changes.
I have the one that, what's the difference between the one that was on the 4th and one that was on the 11th?
1 week.
Thank you.
Oh my, that was,
I don't know if there's any, I don't know.
I don't know.
Okay. Well, it's all, they're ensemble sheets, so
Through date 11.
there's
This
these
is
top,
January 10th. Really old.
the top, I don't know, let's see if we can do this. So of the grayed out area on the sheet, so this is basically all of these base adjustments. There's only one that the House changed, and that's the increased operating cost for the sheriffs and state's attorneys. They updated the cost of the court-ordered mental health evaluation, so to give professional, so that was another $50,000. Other than that, the House had no changes. I don't recall us having any discussions of these. I don't know if you want to go through them one by one, or do you want to say that we're just in agreement with all these, all these base adjustments?
I would just say on the CCFAP, the House has agreed with the governor. I don't have a problem agreeing with that, but I would just, I am hoping that when we put the big bill together, we will, because they have intent language elsewhere in the BAA, and I'm hoping that will get fleshed out into a more specific directive around making sure that the money isn't moved in this similar fashion next year.
And I would say, even if we agree to close out the numbers, we're not agreeing to close out the language, so we'll go through the language
Okay.
separately. So if there's any, don't feel like if you're agreeing to the numbers, you can't make the changes to that language, but a point well taken on the language intent on how we're gonna go forward with the payroll tax that's going to the CCFAP and how we word that. So this kind of thing that they did this time doesn't happen.
yeah, and we will go through this document. Okay, because,
And then there's a couple things. Emily was gonna come up with a new sheet with a couple of additions, like the Human Rights Commission, 2 positions, and Solicitor General position. So we'll do those kind of separately. So as you look through this list, is there all these base adjustments? Is there anything you want to hold open? So we can close it out, we can hold it open, we can talk about it now.
yeah.
There's no problem, right?
Yeah, the base, there's the base is that whole top section, which down, the governor's number was 41,097,000. That bottom one, the multiple, that's all the SLA changes for each agency. Instead of giving each agency a line, they just put it all in one. So it's the system level agreements. The House did change that a little bit.
I don't have any objection to closing out that.
All sections.
Yeah.
Amy, do you remember what the House did on the SLA changes? I just don't remember talking that.
Yeah, so the SLA change specifically had to do with state's attorneys and sheriffs, where they came in and said that their ask was actually less than what they told the governor.
Right, so it was like, the governor supported that. There was no issue there. Okay. all pretty straightforward. Ups and downs there. So I'm gonna consider all that closed out. We don't need to talk about any of those sections again. So now there's these one-time adjustments. Let's go through them one at a time. The HHS costs. House agreed with the governor. VEH, I don't think we had any issues there. Same with health equity. This was a reversion from prior appropriation. I think it's from a reversion. They're moving it back over to VEH. The substance use facilities, they're moving that 4 million.
That's because they moved it to the 10.
All right. Yeah, right. So that's what it was when the governor called it the substance use facility. They removed it, gave it a new name called provider stabilization. It was called 10 million.
Yeah, and they added, different, they added like FQHCs.
Right. More money and more eligibility. We talked about yesterday. Any issues with that provider stabilization, $10 million?
No.
Okay. The alternative payment one?
I will when we get to the language.
Yeah, the
of
line,
that,
I agree. Yeah.
Because I think, I would just say personally, I don't want to get in the way of them in the front of it, but I want them, like they've done with the nursing homes, to come back and report to us and tell us what, if there have been issues around that. I want to hear going forward, because this will probably not be the last time something like this happens.
You're absolutely.
Okay, so it'd be good if you have language to talk with Grady.
Yeah, I'll talk with Grady, and
So we can,
I brought that up when Stephanie was here, and they were not opposed.
good, no, I like the idea. The alternative payment model for the Brattleboro retreat, this is that $11 million, which was that Stephanie talked about yesterday. Basically paying for services, beds that we use. Any issue there? We close that one out. Okay, this is the GA program, which I'm assuming we're gonna keep open.
Keep that one open. We've talked about it, had information presented in committee this morning, and we're talking about it again tomorrow morning. So we'll come back.
Okay, we'll hear from the committee.
Yeah.
The mainframe, did you have something else, Manona?
No, that's fine. Leave it open.
Okay, so that's open. That's line 63. 64 is the mainframe transition planning for DCF. I don't think we had any issues there. I'll consider that closed. CC Wiz one-time money. Don't have any issues there. It's net neutral, it's not coming out. And then other fee section. The global payment match. I assume this is just like I guess, yeah, this is just, that's everything, it's just an adjustment. Of what it turned out to be. And here's something, maybe people want to talk about, the bond redemption. So this is the $14 million, the governor paying it back to the treasurer. The House said, no, you're not going to pay it back to the treasurer, we're going to spend it on 3 items, which was one, the GA extension of cold weather, the pilot projects completion for the adults with disability housing, and then the additional funds for VHCB for kind of general VHCB projects.
So how much is housing? 13?
2.8.
No, it's
Oh,
8.6 for VHCB and 2.8 for VHCB, but specifically for those pilot projects that had started. And then there's a 1.84 for GA. I think if you add all those, you get to 14 million. If only we had a math teacher.
Could you throw that VHCB number out again?
VHCB is 8.6 million. Well, it's actually 11.4.
It's the last one.
It's the 8.6 plus the 2.8, so 11.4 to VHCD.
66.
So,
But it's not 14, is it? It's 11.4 plus 1.8,
so,
that's 12,
but can you
13.6.
remind me, the 2.8
I'm looking at.
was
the
gonna
VHC
finish
VHC
projects.
funding
Yeah.
8.6.
The 8.6
6.
is not in the same category of finishing the projects,
No,
and is an increased appropriation to VHCB.
Correct.
My question is, if we're facing all of the federal ups, downs, everything, and not knowing where it is, and we hand them money and the budget adjustment doesn't get passed, it's probably gonna be March before any of this. I don't see how VHCB can spend the money before the end of June. And would it not be better that we saved at least the 8 whatever decision to be done in the next year's budget to do that? That leaves out there the 2.6, I'm a little more sympathetic to if it goes directly to a project that finishes it.
Well, and that project that can be done. It's 2.8, I think. You're talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a lot more, I'm just talking for myself, I'm a lot more sympathetic to that, to finish a project that's there, and if the money went out and it got, but the 8 something, would we not be better to do it in the next year's budget and consider it with all the needs of everything?
Would that add to the 46 and then make it 54? Is that what you're thinking? At the bottom line.
At the bottom line, it would add to the bottom line
Yeah.
of the money
Right,
that
so
we
we'd
would
end up with
make decisions of
54
next
million
year.
plus or minus.
well, let's leave it open, because we
Okay.
haven't heard from VHCB, they're coming in, we can hear the whole story on both funding amount, both things, and then make a decision after we've heard their testimony.
I'm fine with, I'm just raising the issue because I'm thinking that the more we can leave on the bottom line and judge it in the context of next year's budget, the better off we are. I don't want to hold anything up that is.
Okay,
Shovel
Senator,
ready.
And I take that point. I don't know how hard the House would fight for that 8.6. But I don't want us to forget the other 6 million that the treasurer has. And he was receptive to the idea that we would, move that back into the general fund. So to Richie's point, Senator Weston's point, I could see several ways of doing it. One would be that we go along with the House on the 8.6, but we move that 6 million back to the bottom line, or that we take Senator Weston's recommendation and instead of moving the 8.6 million back, we add it to 6 and we've added 14 million,
14.
which starts to look more like a reserve, more like a formidable reserve.
Wasn't 1 million of that obligated, I thought, out of the 6 million left over?
Well, for the medical debt program, it's
Yeah,
not
medical,
obligated.
yeah, it's out
in
of
the
the 20
bill.
million, we use
Okay.
1 million for medical.
I'm not opposed to that at all. I think I signed on your bill.
You did.
But, yeah, I'm just of the mind that with all the stuff going on at the federal level and everything, if we're putting the budget together in April, we need room.
like Senator said, I get that point. My only counter to that is that we're in a housing crisis. And if we think we're gonna do it, the sooner we do it, the quicker that these units can be built. One of the things around the language is, do we want to highlight homeless shelters? Because I think it's basically a whole list of anything that VHCB normally does.
Mhm.
But if we're trying to move people into permanent shelters, then maybe that should be a priority for this money, if we're kind of thinking of it as a crisis in the VA.
And I would just say to that, if it holds it up for 3 months, I rarely see a project built in 3 months.
Well, just, does this start 3 months earlier, but I thought it would be good. Okay, well, we'll leave both those open just so we can hear from VHCB, get their testimony, and answer questions. So that's the one-time changes. There's this 170, Act 181, convert appropriations to a transfer. I can't remember what that.
Put a mark on the ones we're leaving open.
At 900,000.
What line is that?
Emily might be.
Line 70.
Oh,
Emily, do you know?
Oh, yeah, so this one is a kind of a net neutral thing, it's with, so for the record, Emily Burton, the Joint Fiscal Office. In Act 181, there was a transfer of general fund to, or no, there was an
That was the
appropriation.
housing bill? Maybe?
The housing bill, yeah.
Oh, is this the money?
Or not that, yeah, the housing and, biodiversity land use
Yeah.
change bill from last year. So there was an appropriation to the, Land Resources Board of $1.3 million.
Oh, so this is kind of, this is part of the
Yes.
transfer between the two different boards. Okay, I know.
Yeah.
So we're okay with that.
Yeah.
So then there's these other kind of transfers, the additional cannabis funds. No agreement, it's just there's more money, basically debt service, and other transfers, and there's another sheet, I think, on that. Is that, we don't have a transfer sheet, we had that whole sheet on reversions. That's not on here, right? If there's not a sheet.
So I have a sheet, I haven't shared it,
Ah,
but I'm happy to share it with you. I mean, I gave you a lot of spreadsheets. I can give you more spreadsheets.
and you have a new spreadsheet.
Yes, you
Okay. So there's a sheet on transfers?
Do you want me to pull it up?
Yeah. Is it an?
I didn't print it, I can send it out in print.
Is it an interesting sheet?
It's not classified.
Is it something we're gonna wanna see?
Probably. Can't hurt, right? LD mentioned, great. Yeah, so the other, this other transfers. I gotta make sure. Which one are we on?
There's a difference, the house had a $3 million difference that they added to the insurance reserve fund. Is that the employee? Did the house just think they needed more money? What, do you remember what that was?
Line.
This is line 75.
Yeah, this is their change was, you remember we talked
Oh, wasn't it?
about it yesterday, or maybe Commissioner Gresham talked about it, the EB5 thing. So they transferred money to the state liability insurance fund and reduced or an increased reversion. So
Just so that they could have general funds, so they weren't using federal funds to pay a federal fund. Whenever I see insurance, I just think health insurance, because that's always what we're talking about. So liability insurance, they think about. Okay. But that was 3 million of the 24 million. So you're gonna show us a sheet that shows the rest of them? And then while Emily's doing that, the revenue section below, I'm assuming we don't have any issues with, we're not gonna have an issue with any of these, there's just updated.
Well, again, just to hold open a discussion on, in addition to the 14 million.
Yeah. Six, yeah.
And I can show you, I think it's next to the reversion line, it says supplemental sheet, I can show you that one
Right.
too.
I wonder, we still have to, so we would hold open maybe 88 till we look at that whole list.
Just a question
Yeah.
about, so in the discussion that we had yesterday with Adam Gresham about the I think it was the carry forward language about what the waterfall money was, where would that live in line 84?
No, I don't think it would be in, well, this is just the dollar number.
Mm-hmm.
That would be something we
It'd
would
be a
go through when we
language.
go through not that,
Okay, thank you.
the language,
Yeah.
Language.
the pre-waterfall, I call it.
Pre-waterfall.
It's really a dam and a diversion to get around the waterfall.
It's a sluice.
It's loose.
Maybe a tile drain.
Nick on. I wonder how he's doing.
Okay, so this is the other sheet
This is the other sheet.
of transfers.
So this is the other sheet. So in, section 101, or in the, I should know off the top of my head, in H 141, there's amendments to section D 101 of Act 113, which changes the transfers. And so this shows like what was as passed, what transfers were assumed in the budget, when it passed, right? So this is the one that we all know about, the 25 million to the ed fund, and then sort of the other monies moving to special funds that needed general fund to kind of shore them up or had additional needs. In Act 181, there was also a general fund appropriated to the Vermont Housing Conservation Trust Fund and the Municipal Regional Planning Fund, and this sort of had to do with the allocation of property transfer tax, and there's actually language that repeals this section of Act 181 because it is dealt with in the section around the property transfer tax. We can talk about that one maybe when we get to the language, but just to point that one out there. So in the governor's recommended budget adjustment, there were some changes to those. So there was the, we didn't need to do the transfer to the tobacco fund. That would have driven the tobacco fund into the hole. So they eliminated that transfer to maintain a positive balance in the tobacco fund.
What's the ERAF change?
The ERAF, oh, sorry, that one, they needed additional money in the Emergency Relief and Assistance Fund to help towns that were impacted by the flood. And with ERAF, there's always a sort of, there's usually a transfer in the budget adjustment to ERAF, and the magnitude of that depends just sort of on the cash flow, when towns are finishing projects and when the state obligation comes to fruition. The state needs to put money out to the towns.
Yeah, underline.
So, remind me, where do the funds come from for ERAP? What is
The general fund.
It's all general fund?
And mainly it pays a share of the town's share for FEMA.
Right.
It also used for other things.
It's mostly used for the state share of the non-federal match
Right.
for ERAP. The non-federal match is split between the municipalities and the state. So that's the first change in the budget adjustment, is putting more money into the Emergency Relief Assistance Fund, not doing a tobacco fund transfer to keep it positive. This one doesn't change. This was based on the, I believe on the revenue changes that happened related to DFR fees.
Right.
So there's more to direct out there. The Workforce Education and Training Fund, when we go through the language, there is a repeal of that fund because it hasn't been used in a long time. It's
Right.
no longer utilized, but there's a balance sitting in it. So this sweeps the balance back into the special fund. The same is true with the Vermont Traumatic Brain Injury Fund, which only has $1,500 left in it. So that's why it looks like zero, but it's a very small, goes away with rounding. So these are the two. These direct transfers don't need to happen because they're taken care of through the property transfer tax allocation update. This is the insurance fund that you're thinking of, the state employee health insurance transfer, to make sure that that fund stays in the black, given increases in, or to help mitigate increases in rates. The correctional industries fund is the same, is also being, or no, has a deficit and needs to be brought back to zero. So they're making a general fund transfer there. The Act 250 fund, this is that what we were just talking about, that $900,000 that was in Act 181 that's being converted from an appropriation to a transfer. They're putting this negative means they're taking general fund and putting it into the Act 250 fund. So those are all the governor's changes. The only difference in the House, the only change that they made was to move $3 million to the state liability self-insurance fund to cover the EB-5 payment. And so if you add the 21.2 plus 3 gets you the $24 million worth of changes in transfers that's on the big sheet.
Okay.
Right. Somewhere, right.
Anybody have any questions about transfers? No, I'll consider that closed out except for the language that we considered.
Can we get a list of the towns?
Yes, we will do that to you tomorrow.
That'd be great.
Yes, the rest.
But where are we on the EB-5 payments?
I don't know. We can find out. I know it's a multi-year,
important, it's
I
just
think it's a
future.
multi-year
Yeah.
payment.
I think there was at least one.
What?
Well, if there was at least one more
Oh, yeah.
after this year. After this year.
Receiver.
So Richie had to leave, Senator Westman and Richie both had to leave. We basically closed out everything except for the GA money. This line 63, the VHCB money on 67. The reversions, Emily, you can maybe show us that sheet tomorrow.
I could do it right now if you wanted me to. Or I guess Senator Weston's not here. So
Yeah,
we can
well,
do it.
if we just had the whole sheet, maybe it's easier to see if you get either print it out or on.
I can print you, I'll print you the reversion sheet and I can print you this sheet too, so you have a.
I think we're okay with the transfers.
I only went through the transfers out. I didn't go through the transfers.
And also the reduced direct apps.
Yes, that one's also on the sheet. I can give you a sheet on that one. So
Okay. So then
we can walk through it.
So those two are open for tomorrow. And then unless somebody tells me different, I have 4 things that we will talk about, that we can talk about tomorrow. That is the flood relief payments to the towns, the reversion of the additional $6 million from the treasurer, the Human Rights Commission 2 positions, and the position in the Solicitor General's office. Is that anything else? So we'll talk about those additions and these 3 or 4 things that we have open, and then we'll go through the language and see if we have questions, concerns. We can ask for changes to the language if we need be, or other testimony we need. And then we'll also maybe hear from Health and Welfare if any.
Hopefully,
Or two.
definitely, yeah. So.
Okay, so anything else folks want to talk